Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Simon McKay from the Agonist to talk about his 5 most influential drummers. How's it going, dude?
It's going great, man. I can't complain other than everything that's going on. But otherwise, doing good, staying happy, staying healthy, doing my best.
One of the things I really appreciated about it, this whole situation that is happening, is that you've been able to keep your sense of humor unaffected throughout this whole pandemic. That's not an easy thing to do, I must say. You're really trailblazing that path of not letting anything affect how you perceive the world and how you perceive people in general, and always looking at the bright side of life. You're like a Monty Python movie, but in a person version.
Oh, you just flattered the heck out of me right there, bud, with that reference.
But you feel that way a little bit? Like you have a great outlook on life in general.
I'm really happy, you noticed that. That's cool. I don't know. I think that I just hate when shit gets too complicated. When stuff gets too complicated, I like to keep life simple and just, there's so much to be happy about out there. And I feel that I've lived a pretty good life so far. I had a pretty good run so far too. So I'd like to just share that, I guess, if I can, with people. And I've always liked making people laugh and, making people smile and making people happy. I've always been a clown, So I guess it's just natural.
So what you're saying is, if you weren't a drummer, you would be a comedian.
Oh, people have told me that, that I should do comedy. So maybe.
Maybe you could open for the Agonist with a stand-up set.
That would suck so bad.
Hey, it's not unheard of. I mean, I went to see Avatar, and they had a freak show opening for them. So you doing stand-up before the band comes on stage is not completely off the realms of possibility. Let's face the facts here.
That would be a very unique scenario.
Well, you can throw in some metal jokes, and then it would be okay. You know what I mean? Like, you would fit right in.
You know what? I think you just might be onto something.
Plus, you'd get paid twice.
Paid?
Well, with exposure. I mean, you get paid with exposure. Because that's how musicians get paid, is with exposure.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Imagine you writing a check, and on the check you write exposure to your landlord. I'm sure that would go really far.
1,000 exposure bucks.
But we're here today to talk about your top 5 most influential drummers. I really wanted to do this with you for a long time, and we've been chatting back and forth about doing something like this. I just find it really interesting because we listen to your music, we see you play live. You're a great drummer, great musician, but we don't necessarily get to know a lot about you and what drove you to become a drummer, and who were the guys that inspire you to become a drummer. So I thought this would be a really interesting conversation because we'll get to know a little bit more about you, the person, and you, the musician.
That's awesome, man.
So starting off with number 5 on the list, John Bonham of Led Zeppelin. Interesting choice.
Yes, sir. John Bonham, because, well, actually, some people know, not everyone knows, I actually originally was a guitar player. At age 12, guitar was my first instrument, and my guitar teacher was obsessed with things that he should be obsessed with to show a student, like Led Zeppelin, Stevie Ray Vaughan, all this good classic rock stuff. So right away, he put me on Led Zeppelin. I'm going to say Graham Ronnie from Vancouver. That was my guitar teacher. Great guy. He put me on Led Zeppelin. And right away, one of the first things I noticed about Zeppelin, even before trying to figure out guitar stuff, was like the drumming. And because I listened to, different stuff and different rock, and nothing quite sounded like the drumming in Led Zeppelin. And there's reasons for that. And there's a reason why John Bonham is one of the most sampled drummers of all time. But to me, he should be on this list because he's not a metal drummer, but he is the most hardest hitting drummer from that time period. I mean, he is like a god of thunder on the drums. You'd see him do a drum solo, he'd be hitting so hard. I mean, he was like the original, meat and potatoes metal drummer. Today we talk about, about sound, about getting the right sound out of your drum. And, it's really important. And he had a certain sound. Every note he would hit would be full and clear. And also he had this just nasty, like sexy, groovy feel. But above all, he was just a really hard hitter and a thunderous drummer, and he provided like this like landscape, uh, this total. He paved the way for metal drummers, just down to the basic beat of just like just that. I mean, you know, you could say AC/DC, whatever, but I'm sure people might even disagree with me that Bonham, you know, there was this guy and that guy. Yeah, sure. But for me, Bonham was the first metal drummer that I ever heard.
It had that deep of an impact. So was he the reason why you changed from guitars to drums?
No,
Was
not at
part
all.
of the reason?
No, not at all. I just ended up it kind of just happened. I don't really know how it happened. I kind of just like started messing around with my buddy's drum set and realizing I could kind of play, and then I ended up playing a bit more and more. And then actually I really wanted to join bands, but you know, of course everyone's looking for a drummer in a band, not a guitar player. Guitar players are a dime a dozen. So I ended up being like, well, I want to play fast drums, so I'll join a punk band. And I was in like a punk band playing, and that was super cool. And then and here I am. I'm a drummer.
Wow, nice little path to glory that you had there.
Yeah.
And it's a smart move. It's understanding your surroundings and understanding that there's more demand for one thing than the other. Why not move towards something that will get you to where you want to be, which was in a band?
Yeah, and I still play a lot of guitar, and actually especially a lot nowadays, and I'm still a songwriter for the band. I'll usually write one song per album that gets on the album, and you know, that's me playing guitar on the album. I track the guitar, and I'm involved with it's just good to have perspective of guitar and drums together, really.
Yeah, the more versatile you are, the better you're all around.
Yeah, and then going back to Bonham is that he really played with the guitar. He played like on with the guitar at the same, you know, the accents punching down at the same time the guitar is punching down. That's something very metal, you know, the strong accents.
Did you feel like he had a lot of warmth in his sound? Like when you hear the drums, the drums feel like almost they have their own life within the overall sound.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. Like Led Zeppelin 4 is one of the greatest drum recordings of all time. No question about that. And it's just so different from nowadays, the sound of it and the feel. And I mean, he was also doing this, probably playing along with other people in the same room, and you know, there was no like editing like there is now, and it was all exactly what you get is what you hear is what you get.
Yeah, which makes things even more impressive when you think about it. Like the work that he did back then, without the technology and without the tools that we currently have now, just makes everything feel even more important and more impactful, and showcases how a great drummer he was to be able to do what perhaps now some people are doing, but with added tools around them to help them to get to that point.
Yeah, he and the many other drummers around him at that time too, but he's definitely worth noting. Yeah.
So next on your list is Martin Lopez of Son, former Opeth and Amon Amarth. Why this one? Why this pick? I was kind of surprised to see this name on the list.
Because Martin Lopez because I got into Opeth at a very young age, and I got into them by buying metal magazines, by buying the Brave Words Bloody Knuckles magazine, which included a CD. Every month they had a CD, and I like was crazy about that. I could not miss one issue. I loved getting the CD and the little packaging. I think that's like a lost like art or whatever. And Opeth was one of the first mix CDs that I got, and it was the song "Bleak" from the album Blackwater Park. I remember hearing that and going like, I had never heard anything like that before. Then I got into Opeth on that album Blackwater Park, and the best thing about Martin Lopez, the greatest thing about him, is that he has the death metal drumming chops. Let's say really fast double bass or whatever. But then he had this great Latin swing, which no one else was doing, especially at that time, because he's got like a Latin drumming background. And myself, when I was a kid, my mom used to constantly play like salsa and Latin music, and she's really into Latin music. So like these little Latin beats in Opeth really resonated with me, and I really felt like this was like a part of me. And the music of Opeth at that time, especially, was just so beautiful, and they were like my favorite band, and they still are. But he put this unique like swing on this heaviness. At the same time, he was able to just unleash like a flurry of brutality. And also, I don't know how much editing they were doing at that time too, but I can definitely tell there was so much feel, and I can just hear little nuances. I actually met him on 70,000 Tons of Metal too.
Oh, how was that experience?
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic. Like, I can't even think of a better experience than that. It was just like you're just in your own world with all these people that just anyone could be your friend. You could just go up to like this random guy and be like, "Hey, what's up, dude? What band are you going to see?" "Oh, I'm going to see fucking Exodus, whatever. Cool, let's go." You know, the vibe is so amazing, and just the food and everyone. That's, you know, you could wake up at like 8 a.m. and be like, "I'm gonna go see Soilwork on the upper deck," you know.
Yeah, it's
But
really.
he was cool.
Did you fanboy a little bit with him? Like, did you try to pick his brain a little bit, or he was
Absolutely.
just like absorbing the aura that he exudes?
No, I'm a very like social guy. I'll just go right up and talk to someone. I spoke to him a bunch actually. We hung out a bunch, and uh, yeah, I explained to him how I loved like all the early albums and how much he influenced me. And he saw our second set, and he came up to me and he was like, you know, really impressed, and that really really touched me, and I was really really flattered. And it's funny because I said to him, he was like, "Oh, wow, amazing set," you know. Wow, I was like, "Wow, man, I'm so flattered." But did you hear you? and, he, and he laughed. But I mean, seriously, he has a big impact on my drumming, and you can hear that on Agonist songs. Absolutely.
Is his work on Opeth his best work in your opinion, or how do you feel towards what he did with Amon Amarth and now his current band?
I would say it's definitely his best work with Lopez, hands down. Blackwater Park, Deliverance, Damnation, hands down.
Well, yeah, interesting. All right, next on the list is Nick Barker. Interesting choice, and I can see perhaps this one for me wasn't a surprise because I could see a little bit of certain elements of Nick Barker on you. But how did they make number 3 on your list?
Because Nick Barker was, again, going back to the first like wave of me discovering metal bands. He was among the first drummers that I heard that was doing this like, you know, this fucking beat, this double bass blast beat thing. And because basically for me, I went from um like the first rock or heavy band, like I went like Korn, Marilyn Manson, that era, you know, because of my age too. I'm 34, and then sort of started to progress a little bit and realizing there's heavy stuff. And again, on these mixed CDs from these magazines, from Brave Words, Bloody Knuckles, I discovered Dimmu Borgir, the album Puritanical Euphoric Misanthropia. Heck of
Wow.
an album name. But that album, and many will agree, is, I mean, that's for metal drumming, I mean, it doesn't really get any better than that, because this guy was blazing fast, but he had groove and really sweet ideas and just beautiful execution, and production was clear and you could hear everything. Just beautiful execution, but just keeps your blood flowing the whole time. His work in Dimmu Borgir, also with Cradle of Filth too, very good drumming. But I was really exposed to that album. That really changed how I see drumming.
What would you call it? Like controlled chaos to a certain extent, because very explosive, very powerful, raw at times, but at the same time polished, controlled, not all over the place.
Yeah, essentially what you should be as a metal drummer, in my opinion. It's like everything is right there. And polished is really important. That comes down to production too, your producer and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just there's no point in doing all this crazy stuff if you can't hear what's going on. But you also have to play that well too. And there's of course ways to get around the studio, you know, how it sounds in the studio. But I've seen videos of him live. He can pull it off. He was also on the boat. I didn't really have much of a chance to speak to him, but I saw him everywhere.
Was it on the same 70,000 tons?
Yeah,
You should have
he was
gotten a
there.
picture with the two of them. That would be absolutely epic.
Yeah, I really should have. I got plenty of pictures with Martin Lopez, but yeah. So Nick Barker was playing with Brew Haria on the boat.
Yeah, that's his new band. Much different as far as sound, feel. I mean, it's night and day. You cannot even compare. I mean, there's a close proximity between Cradle of Filth and Dimmu Borgir than there is between those two bands. And
Yeah,
Brujeria is like like seems completely different. Were you surprised when he went to that band, when he joined that project? Because like I said, it seems far away from where he was before.
Honestly, I think he joined that band quite a while ago, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I remember like, cause I was following Nick Barker, and then, oh, Nick Barker, like Brujeria, what's that? I've never heard of that. And it didn't really resonate with me as much as, you know, the Dimu stuff did, or Cradle, of course. But yeah, it's cool. Whatever floats your boat, right?
Yeah, whatever makes you happy, I guess it did. Plus, you're always looking at different things. Otherwise, it's going to be maybe boring and redundant to just do the same thing over and over again, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's like starting a side project that sounds exactly like your main band. Like, might as well just stick to your band.
It's been done before.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. It has been done more than once, you know?
Yeah.
It's been done multiple times. Next on your list is Paul from Cannibal Corpse. Interesting choice, but the right choice in my opinion. I really feel like if you're putting a list of great drummers together, he needs to be on that list and high on that list. So I'm not surprised that he's that impactful to you. But how did you discover Paul, and how did his play style influence you?
I discovered Paul through the album The Bleeding, which is to this day is my favorite Cannibal Corpse album. And that was back when I was like, I was like a teenager. I was like a little pipsqueak. And I just remember hearing Cannibal Corpse. Oddly enough, my first exposure to Cannibal Corpse was a music video, which didn't really have like many music videos, but I used to stay glued to Much Music, which is I used to stay glued to it to try to, because every now and then they would slip in this like heavy band, and you'd be like, oh, what the heck was that? And I used to record it on VHS.
Did you watch Loud, by the way? That was their,
yeah, of course.
That was their version of Headbangers Ball.
Of course, I watched Loud. I would record it. And then when it used to be an hour, then it got cut to half an hour, and I got really upset when that happened because they had like a punk show or something. And of course, I watched it
before. I can't remember what the name of the punk show.
It was called 1-2-3 Punk.
Was it?
Yeah, 1-2-3 Punk. Here it was. Maybe in Quebec, maybe it's different.
Yeah, I think the one here in Ontario was hosted by Suki and Lean. I don't know if you remember her.
Oh.
Man, this is really deep cuts now. We're going really far into the vault. But yeah, I remember when I came to Canada, Loud was my jam, was on Saturday night, and I got really pissed off when they cut it into half an hour, because how many videos can you squeeze in half an hour? Plus when you have like people talking, interviews, that kind of stuff, doesn't leave room for much. But you were saying you were watching Cannibal Corpse video.
Yeah, Cannibal Corpse, and the video for Devoured by Vermin came on. It's not like a spectacular video at all. It's just exactly what you would expect. But I remember being like, what the heck was that? And I recorded it on VHS, and I would listen back to it, and I wasn't sure what kept on bringing me back to it. But I ended up, loving death metal. And now Paul from Cannibal Corpse is actually, I find he gets like, I've seen him get some flack from other drummers for like, I don't know what, but I personally think Paul paved the way for like all this death metal, all these bands that you hear. I mean, again, it comes down to groove. Paul had groove. It wasn't all just about blasting everything. And we're talking about Cannibal Corpse here, the most brutal band at that time, especially. Mm-hmm. Like, look at their album covers, brutal as hell, but Paul keeps it together. There's a lot of death metal bands where it's just like, it's everywhere. And that's cool too, man. That's really cool too, but I just personally, I like it when it's like he made those Cannibal Corpse songs into a song, and he also, like, there's one beat he did that to me is the Paul Mazurkowitz beat, and it's the that groove. That's the Cannibal Corpse groove. There's no question about that. And to this day, he continues to write catchy drums. Also met him. I met him a couple times too. He's a really nice guy too, and I like humble people. That helps too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you feel sometimes? Maybe it's just me, but my perspective is, specifically with death metal, sometimes the drums don't get, or the drummers don't get necessarily the recognition when you're looking at an album from that perspective of the overall experience that the album has to give. But I always feel like the drummer plays such an important role in creating the foundation in which all the sound is built upon. And if that drummer cannot build that great foundation, everything else starts to kind of fall apart. And then the sound, it doesn't feel whole. It doesn't feel as one. It starts to kind of like seep in through the cracks, if you will. Do you see it
Yeah,
that way as well?
I absolutely do see it that way. But I mean, from my perspective, it seems to me that in the extreme metal genre, the drummers actually get all the cred, um, because they're doing something that's insane. uh, but from my perspective too, because I'm very, I like to read up about the extreme drumming world and on the forums and this and that. So that's what I'm exposed to. I'm sure if I was in the guitar forums and this and that, and I would see that as well. But I find that in general, death metal drummers, it's like you're listening to a death metal band. The drummer's got to be like amazing.
Yeah, they have to. I mean, you can't get away with just your average drummer. You can get away with average people within a band, but the drummer from that specific genre, that specific sound, it holds a lot of weight. It takes really the band from being an okay band to an above average band.
Yeah, and it's always been like that. A drummer will always carry the band. If your drummer is all over the place, you will sound all over the place. But the word amazing to describe a musician is also subjective, because are you amazing that you can fly around the fretboard at a million miles an hour and you're super speed? Or are you amazing because you do something that resonates with people? There's like different schools of thought here, and that's why I didn't pick the 5 best drummers out there, because I would have talked about Terry Bozzio, I would have talked about, you know, Thomas Lang and all these guys that have been doing it. I would have talked about these guys, but these are the drummers that made their way into people's hearts and my heart growing up. And Paul definitely has that groove and that feel that just is so important. And, I'm not that crazy about death metal bands that are just like at 300 BPM the entire time. I kind of just like, okay, I get tired of it after a couple songs.
Yeah, it starts to sound like you can't really tell the forest from the trees at that point. At least to me.
Yeah.
Number one on your list was not a surprise. When I saw this, I mean, when I approached you about doing this list, I honestly thought that this name was going to be somewhere on your list, but it wasn't surprised to be number one, and that's Mario Duplantier from Gojira. I think even if you're not a drummer, I don't care who you are, if you just listen to metal on a regular basis, if you're a hardcore, this guy's got to be on your list regardless. The question is always going to be where on the list, but I don't think you can have a list without him being on it. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And the reason why he is number one is because he is all of those drummers that I just spoke about, but in one guy. Okay? He has the grooviest chops, the most feel chops you'll ever hear. I mean, you could sit down in a room and play guitar with this guy, and he would just blow you away by playing the most simplest beat you've ever heard. That's what I'm talking about. That's a real drummer. Someone that can break it down, but still blow you away from something that's really, really simple. And he does play very simply a lot of times, and then he'll go into this other then on the other side, he has the extreme death metal chops, man. He can blast, he can do double bass, he can play very, very fast, but the sound is so clear. The production is there, and like another thing is that a big part of a drummer's sound comes down to the producer of the album. Like the producer is actually responsible for this drummer's career, because if you don't sound good, people aren't gonna you're not gonna resonate with people. So he had that production the whole time. And he just has that like precise attack and so much groove, and he can go super fast. And it's like he also, when he plays, it's a real show. You can't help but watch this guy. I mean, his stick height is crazy. He doesn't just hit a drum like this. He hits a drum like his stick is back here, and then he hits that drum. So there's no one better than that out there right now. I mean, this guy can play to an arena of people, and the guy all the way in the back can hear him, and he can play a small show, and the guy in the front, it's like he's like the all-purpose drummer.
Is he almost like a chameleon from that perspective? He adapts to his environment, to where he is, to what he needs to do. Do you feel like he always tries to serve the song?
Yes, absolutely. So, and it's even especially in like the latest stuff they put out, it's so much that it might almost even start being too much. I might almost want to be like, hey dude, go crazy for a second, because He absolutely serves this song, and he always has. And from the Mars to Sirius album, that's the drums are a huge part of that album, serving the riffs, but just keeping that brutality going. But at the same time, he really has his own style. When you hear him, you know it's him. So he's got all these great traits, and he managed to put his own style on top of that. Because you can also be a good drummer and have all these chops, but you don't have your own original sound. You just emulate, and that's fine too. But on top of being like this technically amazing guy, that he has like this very distinct groove about him.
Do you feel like it's an interesting thought that I'm having? I believe that everybody these days, when they think of Gojira, they think a lot about him. Like he's a huge part of what the band is, because obviously he's a huge part of what the sound is. Looking at him from a drummer's perspective, do you feel like the band would be completely different without him in the picture?
Oh, absolutely.
He defines
Absolutely.
the sound. He defines the sound of the band.
To me, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, the riffs are very, the riffs are, the riffs of Gojira sound like Gojira. You know, well, to me, they sound a bit like Morbid Angel. um, but no, I mean, you take that guy out of the band and put someone else, it wouldn't sound the same at all. I think Led Zeppelin, when they hung it up and they called it quits, it's because, you know, Bonham passed away. They couldn't find someone that had that thunder that he had. They didn't even want to try to find someone. I mean, that just goes to show how important it is. You know, when you have that drummer that has a unique sound, that's like irreplaceable.
Yeah, I feel that way about both bands, and definitely about Gojira. It's just interesting because, from my perspective, when I was growing up, drummers always played a huge role in bands, and we gravitated to some drummers. But I've never, I don't know, me personally. Once again, this is just my personal perspective. I think with Gojira and Mario, I think they're the first band where, to me, his role is kind of surpassed almost everybody on the band. He's almost like the front. And behind the drum kit. Do you see what I'm saying? Like normally when you think of bands, you always think of the lead singer, the guitar player. You know, they're the ones getting all the attention. You know, because they're in the forefront, right? So the drummer almost kind of goes forgotten in the background. But when I think of Gojira, I always think of him first. He's always like Gojira, Mario. Like the two are synonymous with each other. You can't think of one without the other.
That's it. Exactly.
And that, I think that's a huge compliment for him and for the work that he has done.
Yeah, man, and it'll stick. You know, their work will stick around, and he's a big part of why they'll stick around, because a lot of people can listen to Gojira. People that don't really like metal, like you were saying before, people that don't necessarily appreciate metal might be able to appreciate Gojira, because it's simple enough, I think, and the drumming really ties it all together. And lately, like. Joe Duplantier's voice has been less screamy and a bit more melodic, and so they're going in that direction. I think it's great, because when I first heard this band, I mean, they were like really underground, and now they're like a bloody arena band. I mean, it's quite incredible.
Yeah, they've blown up. They're huge, these guys. You know, so wow,
Yep.
really interesting. It's really interesting to hear from you, and it's really interesting to get this list. This was an absolute blast to kind of pick your brain about the drummers that have influenced you, that have made you who you are as a musician and as a drummer. Incredible list, incredible names. Simon, thank you very much for your time, man. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. And stay healthy and stay safe.
Hell yeah, man. You too. Same to you. And obviously, it goes without saying, can't wait to get all this shit behind us and get back to fucking headbanging like crazy, right?
Yeah, at a show, like, trust me, man, I'm dying to be at a show. I'm dying to experience all the things that I used to hate about going to a show. There's always, for as much as you enjoy going to shows, there's always something that you hate. You know what I'm saying? Like,
of course.
It's like being on the road, like touring. You know, like for as much fun as it is, there's always things that you're gonna hate about it. But now you're like, man, I really miss those things.
Oh yeah.
Maybe I don't hate them as much as I used to. Because they're not there anymore. So sometimes we take things for granted. And I think if there's one positive that will come out of this, is all of us will have a much better appreciation for the things we've lost during this time period. I always tell people this, and now I think it will resonate, which is if a band comes to town that you really want to see don't skip it. Don't go the next time. Don't say, well, next tour I'll go because it's a Wednesday night and I got to work on Thursday. Don't do it. You just don't know when it's going to be the last time you're going to see that band in your town. Support the bands. Go and see the band. Go and see the show. Enjoy yourself. You only live once.
Yeah, and make memories for yourself. You know, who cares if you're going to be tired as hell for work the next day? Do it, man. Do it, because you know what? When you get older, all these shows, all these things you've done, you're going to feel good about it. Like, you know, knock on wood, if something happened, I got hit by a truck tomorrow, I'd have to say all the tours, all the shows I've done and everything, that I feel good about that. I feel like I've had a good run so far.
Listen, I think I'm the prime example. The last time that I saw the Agonist in Toronto, you guys were releasing the new album. It was an album release show in Toronto. And I had the worst case of diarrhea that I've had in a long time. I took 4 Imodiums and I went to the show.
Jesus.
Well, I had to be, I was not going to miss that show. I was not going to miss it. And at the same time, I don't think you wouldn't want to see me there, spending a lot of time in the toilet, if you know what I'm saying. So
no wonder you were sweating so much.
Yes, I was sweating and I was really worried about, am I going to last the whole evening? But 4 Imodiums did the job. It held it all in, and I enjoyed the show. So I did what I had to do. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do.
I commend you, sir. You held the gates of Mordor quite well. But eventually they fell.
2 days later, we released the Hounds, and the Kraken was also released.
Oh,
and,
2 days? I thought you said you couldn't. I thought you said it was coming out. You couldn't.
Yeah,
anyway.
It was ugly. It was ugly. But for that night, I think all I ate was bananas, and I took the Imodium. I was just trying to survive that one night because the time before that you guys came to town, I was really sick and I missed the show at the Hard Luck Bar. So I was like, I'm gonna miss you guys coming to Toronto twice. I don't care. Like I'm gonna have to be in my dying bed for me to miss this show. So I made it, and I'm glad that I did because it was a great night, it was a great evening, it was a great show, and you guys played amazing. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in Toronto soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to just play. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Simon. Take care. Once again, stay safe, and we'll stay in touch.
All right, man. You take care of yourself. It was a damn pleasure, and talk to you soon.
All right, man. Bye.
Peace.